63 applicants stood in the glass lobby of Meridian Capital, every one of them dressed in black, every one of them holding leather portfolios that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Then the door turned and Mason Rivers walked in. Worn canvas jacket, scuffed work boots. Behind him, a 6-year-old girl clutching a gray stuffed elephant named Bolt. The laughter came immediately. Someone near the coffee station said it looked like a maintenance worker had wandered into the wrong building. Mason did not look up. He took his daughter's hand and walked to the registration desk. On his wrist was a watch. Simple. Steel case, faded leather strap. What happened in the next 40 minutes would expose a theft that had been running for 7 years, collapse a $200 million acquisition, and prove that the most valuable object in the building was the one everyone assumed was worthless. Stay with this one. It earns it. The waiting area was silent in the way expensive rooms are silent. Not quiet, controlled. Mason sat in a chair near the window. His daughter, Lily, climbed into the seat beside him and arranged Bolt carefully on her lap. She smoothed the elephant's worn fabric ears. Mason leaned forward and retied her left shoe. The lace had come loose. He pulled it snug, not tight, and tied it twice. Across the room, a man in a charcoal suit glanced over and smiled the way people smile when they think no one notices. The woman beside him, younger, sharper, whispered something. They both looked at the watch on Mason's wrist and then looked away. At 9:47 in the morning, the elevator doors opened and Claire Donovan stepped out. She was 32. She had been CEO of Meridian Capital for 16 months. The board had appointed her after her father's sudden retirement, and every decision she made was watched, measured, and second-guessed by men twice her age who believed she had not earned the chair. She wore a navy suit. Her assistant, Grace, walked 2 steps behind her, holding a tablet and a stack of folders. Claire's eyes moved across the lobby, counting applicants, assessing posture, cataloging confidence. Her gaze landed on Mason. She stopped walking. Grace noticed. She always noticed. Claire stepped closer. Mason did not stand. He did not look up. He was buttoning Lily's jacket. The zipper had stuck halfway, and he worked it free without pulling. "Excuse me," Claire said. Mason glanced up. His face was calm, not nervous, not eager, just present. "Is this the interview line for the acquisition consultant role?" Claire asked. "Yes," Mason said. Claire's eyes dropped to his wrist. The watch. She stared at it for 3 seconds. Then she smiled. Not a kind smile. Not a cruel smile. Something in between. "That's a nice watch," she said. "Thank you," Mason said. "Is it real?" The room shifted. Not physically, but the air in the lobby changed. 2 applicants near the elevator stopped talking. Grace looked down at her tablet and did not move. Mason did not answer immediately. He finished zipping Lily's jacket. He smoothed the fabric across her shoulders. Then he looked at Claire. "Yes," he said. Claire laughed, not loud, just enough for the room to hear. "I'm sure it is," she said. She turned to Grace. "Let's go." Grace followed her toward the conference room. As they walked, Claire spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. "Someone should tell him," she said, "that wearing a fake Patek Philippe to a job interview isn't the flex he thinks it is." Grace said nothing. She opened the conference room door and stepped aside. Mason sat very still. Lily looked up at him. She did not ask what the woman meant. She knew her father would not explain. She pressed Bolt closer to her chest and waited. Mason had not planned to be here. 3 weeks earlier, he had been working the overnight shift at a manufacturing plant in South Newark, running quality checks on hydraulic seals. The pay was $19.50 an hour. It covered rent, groceries, and Lily's preschool tuition. It did not cover much else. His wife, Caroline, had died 2 years prior. Car accident. Black ice on Route 21. She had been a graphic designer. She had kept sketchbooks filled with logos and layouts and ideas she never had time to finish. Mason kept one of those sketchbooks in the drawer beside his bed. He had not opened it in 11 months. The job posting for Meridian Capital had appeared on a contractor board he checked twice a week. Acquisition consultant. 6-month contract. $85,000. The listing said they were looking for someone with expertise in asset valuation and operational due diligence. Mason had both. He had spent 9 years as a senior analyst at a private equity firm in Manhattan before Caroline got sick. He had walked away from that life to take care of her. After she died, he had not gone back. The hours were too long. Lily was too young. He had taken the plant job because it let him be home by 7 for an A, to make breakfast. But 85,000 would change things. It would mean a better apartment. It would mean he could stop working nights. It would mean Lily could have the kind of childhood Caroline had wanted for her. So he had applied. And now he was here, sitting in a lobby where everyone assumed he did not belong, wearing a watch that had been his grandfather's, waiting for his name to be called. At 10:15, Grace stepped back into the lobby and read from her tablet. "Mason Rivers," she said. Mason stood. He took Lily's hand. She held Bolt under one arm and followed him toward the conference room. Grace looked at Lily, then at Mason. "Is she—" Grace began. "She stays with me," Mason said. Grace nodded. She opened the door. The conference room was long and white and filled with too much light. Claire sat at the head of the table. To her left was a man in his late 40s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that fit like it had been made in Milan. His name was Dominic Hale. He was Meridian's chief strategy officer. He had been with the firm for 12 years. On the table in front of him was a leather notebook and a Mont Blanc pen that had never been used for anything that mattered. Mason sat down. Lily climbed into the chair beside him and set Bolt on the table. The elephant's trunk was slightly torn. She positioned it so the tier faced away from the strangers. Claire folded her hands and leaned forward. "Mr. Rivers," she said, "thank you for coming in. Before we begin, I want to address something." Mason waited. "That watch you're wearing," Claire said. "I'm not sure if you're aware, but wearing counterfeit luxury goods to a professional interview sends a message, and it's not the message you want to send." Dominic smiled. He did not try to hide it. Mason did not move. He did not touch the watch. He did not explain. He simply looked at Claire and waited for her to continue. Claire's smile faded, not because she felt guilty, because she expected a reaction and did not get one. "We're going to move forward with the interview," she said. "But I wanted to be clear about expectations." She opened a folder. Inside were 3 printed resumes. Mason's was on top. Claire skimmed it, flipped to the second page, then set it down. "Your resume says you worked at Keller and Strait for 9 years," she said. "Yes," Mason said. "Why did you leave?" "Family," Mason said. "And since then you've been working in manufacturing?" "Yes." Claire glanced at Dominic. Dominic tilted his head slightly, the way people do when they are pretending to consider something they have already decided. "Mr. Rivers," Claire said, "Meridian Capital is finalizing a $200 million acquisition of a logistics company called FreightCor. We need someone who can assess operational risk, validate asset valuations, and identify vulnerabilities before we close. This is not entry-level work. It requires someone who understands complex financial structures and can move quickly under pressure. Can you do that?" Mason looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes." Claire closed the folder. She looked at Dominic. Dominic looked at the watch on Mason's wrist and then looked away. "We'll be in touch," Claire said. Mason stood. He took Lily's hand. She picked up Bolt and followed him to the door. As they left, Dominic leaned toward Claire and spoke quietly. "Did you see the watch?" he asked. "I saw it," Claire said. "Fake Patek," Dominic said. "Probably bought it on Canal Street?" Claire did not reply. She was staring at the resume. Something about it did not sit right, not the credentials, the gap. 9 years at a top-tier firm, then nothing. People did not walk away from that kind of career without a reason. She made a note on the folder. Then she moved to the next interview. Mason did not go home immediately. He walked Lily to the park, 3 blocks south of Meridian's office. It was a small park, mostly concrete, with 2 benches and a rusted slide. Lily climbed the slide and came down twice. Mason sat on the bench and watched. The watch on his wrist caught the light. He turned his arm slightly and looked at it. The crystal was scratched. The leather strap was faded and cracked in 2 places. His grandfather had worn this watch for 40 years. He had been a machinist. He had worked in a factory in Patterson, running lathes and milling machines, and he had saved for 2 years to buy this watch in 1971. It was a Patek Philippe Nautilus. reference 3701A, the first series. There were fewer than 3,000 of them ever made. When Mason's grandfather died, the watch had been passed to Mason's father. When Mason's father died, it had been passed to Mason. Caroline had wanted him to sell it once. Medical bills had piled up during her final year, and the watch would have covered most of them. Mason had refused, not because of sentiment, because it was the only thing his grandfather had ever owned that proved he had been worth something. At 11:30, Mason's phone buzzed. It was a text from Grace. "I'm Mrs. Donovan would like to see you again. Tomorrow. Naibre Zere." Please confirm. Mason stared at the message. He had not expected a call back. He typed a reply. Confirmed. He put the phone away. Lily came down the slide one more time and walked over to him. She was holding Bolt by one ear. "Did you get the job?" she asked. "Not yet," Mason said. "Will you?" "I don't know." Lily climbed into his lap. She leaned against his chest and closed her eyes. Mason wrapped one arm around her and looked at the skyline across the river. He did not think about the interview. He thought about the morning routine. Oatmeal, tying shoes, walking her to preschool, the small repeating rhythms that kept them both upright. That night, Mason sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. He searched for news about Meridian Capital. The first result was a press release dated 4 days prior. Meridian Capital announces 200 men on its acquisition of FreightCor Logistics. Deal expected to close within 30 days. Mason clicked through to the details. FreightCor was a mid-sized logistics company with contracts across 6 states. The acquisition was being positioned as a strategic expansion into supply chain management. The press release quoted Claire Donovan saying the deal would position Meridian as a leader in integrated freight solutions. Mason opened a second tab and searched for FreightCor's financials. Nothing public. He tried LinkedIn. FreightCor's executive team was small. The CEO was a man named Robert Kern. The CFO was listed as Dominic Hale. Mason stopped. He read the name again. Dominic Hale had been FreightCor's CFO for 6 years before joining Meridian Capital. He had left FreightCor 8 months ago. Now Meridian was acquiring FreightCor, and Dominic was sitting in the room where the final due diligence was being conducted. Mason leaned back in his chair. He did not write anything down. He did not need to. The shape of the problem was already clear. The next morning, Mason arrived at Meridian at 8:50. Lily was with him again. She held Bolt and did not complain about the early hour. Grace met them in the lobby and led them to a different conference room. This one was smaller. Claire was already seated. Dominic was not. Claire looked up as Mason entered. Her expression was neutral, not warm, not cold. Professional. "Mr. Rivers," she said, "thank you for coming back." Mason sat. Lily climbed into the chair beside him and arranged Bolt on her lap. Claire slid a folder across the table. "We've reviewed your resume," she said. "Your experience at Keller and Strait is impressive, but we need to be sure you can handle the scope of this project. I'm going to ask you a few technical questions. If your answers are satisfactory, we'll move forward." Mason nodded. Claire opened a second folder. Inside were financial statements. She turned them toward Mason. "These are FreightCor's Q3 financials," she said. "Walk me through what you see." Mason looked at the page. Revenue, operating expenses, EBITDA, depreciation schedules. He scanned the numbers quickly. His eyes moved to the asset column, then to the liabilities, then to the footnotes. He looked up. "Who prepared these?" he asked. "FreightCor's CFO," Claire said. "Why?" "The depreciation schedule is wrong," Mason said. Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" Mason pointed to a line item. "This asset class is being depreciated over 7 years. It should be 15. That inflates EBITDA by about $4 million, which inflates the valuation." Claire stared at the page. She did not speak. Mason continued, "The inventory turnover ratio is also off. It's listed at 6.2. But if you cross-reference the cost of goods sold with the average inventory balance, the real number is closer to 4.1. That's a red flag. It means inventory is sitting longer than reported. Either demand is dropping or the inventory is overvalued." Claire pulled the folder back toward her. She flipped to the next page, then the next. She did not look at Mason. She looked at the numbers. "How long did it take you to see that?" she asked. 30 seconds, Mason said. Claire closed the folder. She leaned back in her chair. For the first time since Mason had met her, she looked uncertain. Where did you learn to read financials like that? She asked. Keller and Strait, Mason said. I spent 9 years doing operational due diligence on mid-market acquisitions. This is what I did. Claire was quiet. Then she said, Why did you leave? Mason did not hesitate. My wife got sick. I stayed home to take care of her. She died 2 years ago. I've been working nights since then so I can be with my daughter during the day. Claire looked at Lily. Lily looked back. She was holding Bolt close to her chest. The elephant's trunk was torn and one ear was starting to fray, but Lily held it like it was the most valuable thing in the room. Claire turned back to Mason. I'm going to bring you on for the FreightCor acquisition. 6-month contract. $85,000. You'll report directly to me. We close in 23 days. I need you to validate every line item in their financials and flag anything that doesn't match. Can you do that? Yes, Mason said. Good. Start Monday. Claire stood. She extended her hand. Mason shook it. Her grip was firm, not performative, real. As Mason and Lily walked toward the elevator, Grace caught up with them. Mr. Rivers, she said quietly, that watch you're wearing, is it really a Patek? Mason looked at her. Yes, Grace nodded. She did not ask anything else. She stepped back into the conference room and closed the door. Mason started on Monday. Meridian gave him a desk in a shared office on the 4th floor. The room was small and fluorescent and smelled like old coffee. He did not mind. He set up his laptop, logged into Meridian's data system, and pulled up FreightCor's financials. For the next 6 days, he worked through every document they had provided. Balance sheets, cash flow statements, tax filings, vendor contracts, lease agreements. He built spreadsheets. He cross-referenced figures. He flagged inconsistencies. By the end of the first week, he had found 11. The depreciation error he had spotted in the interview was the smallest. The largest was a $9 million discrepancy in accounts receivable. FreightCor had reported $22 million in outstanding receivables, but when Mason traced the individual invoices, only $13 million could be verified. The remaining $9 million was listed under a single client, Vanguard Freight Solutions. Mason searched for Vanguard. No public records. No website. No business filings. He ran the name through 3 databases. Nothing. He walked to Claire's office. Grace was at her desk outside. She looked up. Is she in? Mason asked. She's on a call, Grace said. Can I help? I need to talk to her about FreightCor. Grace glanced at the closed door. Then she said, she'll be done in 10 minutes. Wait here. Mason sat in the chair across from Grace's desk. He did not speak. He looked at the watch on his wrist. The second hand moved in smooth, unbroken arcs. His grandfather used to say that a good watch did not announce itself. It just worked. Every second, every day, no matter who was watching. At 4:47, the door opened. Claire stepped out. She looked tired, not exhausted, just worn in the way people look when they have been making decisions all day. Mason, she said. Come in. Mason followed her inside. Claire sat behind her desk and gestured for him to sit. What did you find? She asked. Mason handed her a printed report. 8 pages, highlighted sections, notes in the margins. Claire read the first page, then the second. Her expression did not change. She flipped to the section on accounts receivable and stopped. Vanguard Freight Solutions, she said. Who are they? I don't know, Mason said. They don't exist. No public records, no filings, no address. Claire set the report down. She looked at Mason. Are you saying FreightCor fabricated $9 million in receivables? I'm saying someone did, Mason said. Claire stood. She walked to the window. Outside, the city was bright and sharp and indifferent. Dominic prepared these financials, she said quietly. Mason did not reply. Claire turned. He was FreightCor's CFO before he came here. He knows these numbers better than anyone. Yes, Mason said. Claire picked up her phone. She called Grace. Get Dominic in here, she said. Now, 5 minutes later, Dominic walked in. He smiled when he saw Mason. The smile did not reach his eyes. Claire, he said, what's going on? Claire handed him the report. Mason found an issue with the FreightCor financials. I need you to explain it. Dominic glanced at the first page. Then he flipped to the highlighted section. His face did not change. This is a timing issue, he said. Vanguard's payment was delayed. It's already been resolved. Show me the proof, Claire said. Dominic hesitated, just for a second. Then he said, I'll pull the documentation. Do it now, Claire said. Dominic left. Mason stayed seated. Claire sat down and looked at the report again. If this is real, she said, the entire deal is compromised. Yes, Mason said. And if Dominic fabricated this to inflate the valuation, then he's been stealing from you since the day you hired him, Mason said. Claire did not speak. She stared at the report. Outside, the light was fading. The city was turning gold and gray. At 6:30, Dominic returned. He handed Claire a folder. Payment confirmation from Vanguard, he said, dated last week. Claire opened the folder. Inside was a single page. A wire transfer receipt, $9 million. Sender Vanguard Freight Solutions. Recipient Freight Corps. Claire studied the page. Then she handed it to Mason. Mason looked at the document. The formatting was clean. The numbers matched, but something was wrong. He turned the page over. No watermark. He held it up to the light. No security features. He looked at the account number. Then he opened his laptop and ran the routing number through a bank verification tool. The result came back in 3 seconds. Invalid. Mason looked up. This account doesn't exist. Dominic's face went still. Not angry, not defensive, just blank. That's impossible, he said. No, Mason said. It's not. Claire stood. She walked around the desk and took the document from Mason. She held it up to the light. She saw what Mason had seen. No watermark. No security thread. She set it down and looked at Dominic. Explain, she said. Dominic did not answer. He looked at the door. Then he looked at Claire. Then he looked at Mason's wrist. That watch, Dominic said. Where did you get it? Mason did not answer. It's fake, Dominic said. I know it is, because if it were real, you'd be wearing it to board meetings, not job interviews. Claire turned to Mason. Is it real? Mason unbuckled the watch. He set it on the desk. The metal was scratched. The crystal was clouded in 2 places. The leather strap was cracked and faded. It was my grandfather's, Mason said. He bought it in 1971. Patek Philippe Nautilus. Ref 3700 1A, first series. If you want to verify it, take it to any certified dealer. Claire picked up the watch. She turned it over. On the back was an engraving. Faint, almost worn away. To Edward, for 40 years of good work. Noni. Claire set the watch down. She looked at Dominic. Get out, she said. Dominic did not move. Now, Claire said. Dominic walked to the door. He stopped. He turned. You're making a mistake, he said. No, Claire said. I'm fixing one. Dominic left. The door closed behind him. Claire sat down. She picked up the watch again and stared at the engraving. How much is this worth? She asked. I don't know, Mason said. I've never had it appraised. Claire opened her laptop. She searched for Patek Philippe Nautilus 3700 1A. The first result was an auction listing from Christie's. Sale date, 6 months prior. Final bid, $2. $9 million. Claire turned the screen toward Mason. Mason looked at the number. He did not react. He had known the watch was valuable. He had not known it was worth that much. You've been carrying $3 million on your wrist, Claire said, and you let me mock you for it. Yes, Mason said. Why? Mason looked at her. Because it didn't matter what you thought. It mattered what was true. Claire was quiet. Then she said, I'm sorry. I know, Mason said. The next morning, Claire called an emergency board meeting. Mason was not invited, but Grace gave him updates throughout the day. By noon, Dominic had been fired. By 2 p. Watch Meridian's legal team had frozen the Freight Corps acquisition. By 4 p. Even the FBI had been notified.